Hi, it's Professor Kokinos. So you are in the pre-production phase of your final video, and hopefully you've come up with a good concept for your piece, and I've already approved your treatment. So the next step is how you're going to pre-produce this and direct it in the pre-production phase. What you want to do is I'll always think about what is your purpose, what is your goal, your strategy, who are you aiming the piece at, and are all those things appropriate for what's in your script? So the process message, what your main objective is and how you're going to get it to your target audience through the medium. The next thing you would think about is your production method. So depending on what you're trying to communicate, do you need to shoot in a studio with multiple cameras? Do you need to shoot on location with multiple cameras? Maybe you need to shoot film style with post-production editing in mind. If you're going to have a lot of cutaways and that kind of thing, you may need to shoot it more of a film style. So once you've decided on your production requirements, then the next thing is the medium requirements. So how will the cameras communicate your objective? Things like graphics, music, lighting, set design, all play a role in communicating and supporting that process message for you. You may want to have a different point of view. For instance, a simple kind of bird's eye view of an interview might be something like, looking at something or looking at the process of a cooking show. Whereas something that may be a little bit more emotional, dealing with, say, a product or a narrative, might be a little bit more like looking into, where the camera sometimes becomes subjective and becomes an audience, a subject, and kind of looks at the scene from within. That might be a better way to kind of show some emotions. The next thing you want to do is really write your script out. So that is where you're going to really kind of get an idea of what your message is and what your dialogue is and how you're going to communicate that message. Then you want to analyze that script and start to think about shots. How am I going to actually portray this message? Should it be wide shot, close up, two shot? So the idea of kind of locking in is what it's called. So imagining what the audio and the video is going to be like. Finding a key shot, for instance. Maybe there's a key shot of the product or someone interacting with the product, a certain camera angle, a certain mood that you're conveying through lighting or movement or whatever. So defining characters might be another way. Every character has a different kind of feeling in the piece and what they're trying to portray. Is there a story that you can embellish? A beginning, middle, and end, the storyline. So as you're visualizing the piece, you're kind of interpreting for the medium. And again, thinking about camera placement, angles, what's in the composition, and how those are going to best communicate your idea to your audience. Also thinking about how your audience is going to be experiencing that final production. Are they watching it on a big movie screen, or are they watching it on a mobile device or somewhere in between? Sequencing is another interesting thing to think about. Now, obviously, if you're editing this live, you're sequencing it live. You've got to pre-plan everything. If you're shooting it for the edit, you might be shooting by location or for convenience and then changing the order later. But no matter what, you're still sequencing, where you're saying one shot follows another for a reason, and it communicates something. That juxtaposition from one shot to another communicates something in a sequence. Just like words in a sentence communicate something, shots in a sequence tell an overall kind of story. So one way to sequence, and it's part of the assignment actually, is to create a very detailed storyboard where you are kind of visually outlining on paper or using a computer program like Storyboarder and putting together that sequence. So a storyboard has lots of advantages. It can help communicate to the rest of the crew the sequencing. It can communicate to the client what is going on, or the client can help communicate to you. And then the idea of certain angles, certain compositions, camera presence, and things like that can be communicated through the storyboard, as well as dialogue, music, and sound effects that also synchronize with the other images. So storytelling is definitely supported with a storyboard, and it's financially very appropriate because it's inexpensive before you get into the studio, before you actually have your gear and your talent. You want to be able to think through the process and let that storyboard really kind of bring it together for you. So on the day of the shoot then, what you might want to do is come up with a floor plan, which would be kind of like a bird's eye view of placement of the camera and the subject, the background, those kind of things, and think about, are those angles working? Is there good kind of sight lines in the shot, and any distractions, busy background, maybe the angle is more of a profile than you want it to be a head-on shot. So floor plan can definitely help you kind of think through that before you actually do your setups. So you can study your floor plan, or if you're on location, do a sketch of what's going on in the environment and how the camera placement and the subject and the blocking or the motion of the subjects is going to relate to each other. Next thing you might want to do is actually mark your script. So you can have your director's script, and then you want to mark it. So the way that we mark the script generally is with clear, very readable marks that are consistent, so everybody kind of understands them. And you don't want to overload the script with markings, or else it becomes too much to read, especially during a live production where you have multiple camera shoot going on. It's enough to have to read the basic script, and then if you have to read all those extra marks, it's going to be too much. So keep it concise, keep it simple. Try to mark things before they happen in the script. You don't need to mark everything. Like, for instance, ready cues are kind of understood, so you don't really need to add them. You're going to be ready in cameras. It's pretty much understood that you're going to be doing that, so you don't have to overdo it. I always mark my scripts in pencil. This way I can modify them or change them. Some people will use red, but I think that pencil is easier to kind of edit. And the final thing you want to do is make sure that everybody is on the same page if you're working with a crew. So your AD, your floor manager, all should have the same markings on their script, and then do a read through where you kind of mentally look at it and rehearse it, so that your crew really knows what your requirements are and what their responsibilities are throughout the production. So good luck.